Hello, you're listening to There Are Lots of Things, show number 1. I'm your co-host, April.
And I'm your co-host, Maddie.
And we are going to take you on a journey with us. So what should we talk about today?
Well, there are lots of things, but today I think we should talk about Hamilton, the musical. Phenomenon or phenome-NOT.
All right. Well, I did just see Hamilton, an American musical, the other day, and it was pretty good.
And I don't know anything about that except that it was written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who I do like a lot because of Moana.
Have you seen anything else he's been in?
No.
No. I just found out yesterday that I actually saw In the Heights while I was in high school, and he wrote and scored that, I think, too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, so just some show information. Hamilton made its Broadway debut in August of 2015. There's all kinds of different musical numbers, from hip-hop to R&B, pop, soul, and then some traditional style show tunes.
So I want to ask a question because I first heard of Hamilton I guess maybe 3 or 4 years ago because my mother-in-law likes to listen to the soundtrack quite a bit. But actually, she has seen it, I remember, because she had a medical emergency that she did not get taken care of until the show was over. But I feel like I was always hesitant to listen to it because I didn't know the story. Do you think that you need to know the story before you listen to the soundtrack?
I do not think you need to know the story before you listen to the soundtrack. I do think it's helpful to listen to the soundtrack before you see the musical.
Okay.
There's a lot of fast songs. In one of the songs I think I read, they speak 6 words in a second. How do you do that? So they talk fairly fast. Before I saw the musical, I was gonna just listen to the first couple songs. Then I got some feedback saying, no, listen to the whole thing. You'll enjoy it better. And I did. And while watching the show, there was words that I did not know what they were saying. Mm-hmm. If I had just been sitting there, and some of it's some pretty big plot stuff. So I think listening to the soundtrack prior to really helped.
Okay. Do you like musicals in general, like other musicals?
Not really.
Okay.
No. One of the things I really liked about Hamilton is that it is a musical all the way through. Mm-hmm. So a lot of other Broadway shows I've seen, a couple traveling shows, and then I've seen 2 on-Broadway shows. And a lot of those things are music, spoken word, music, spoken word. Mm-hmm. And that I don't really like those types of musicals since it's sung all the way through and only one scene that's spoken. It just feels more lively. That makes sense.
It makes sense why there are so many freaking songs then.
Yeah.
Because it's nonstop.
It's the whole thing.
Apologies for my interruption.
So on just that little piece, one of the cool things that in looking up research for the show was finding out that it was very intentional that the whole show is sung, and that there is only one scene that isn't sung, and it's not on the cast album. And I gotta say, seeing that scene in person, I started to cry because it was so emotional, and I'm so glad that it wasn't on the soundtrack.
Oh, okay.
Because seeing it and feeling it and not knowing what was going to happen was amazing. And Miranda even said on his Tumblr page that he made the decision to not record that scene on the album for 2 reasons. One, it was more of a scene than a song, and it's the only scene in the show, and it has an impact that is really felt in production form. And then one of the other ones is that he, as someone who just really got to listen to cast albums and didn't get to go to shows a lot, those moments that weren't on the albums were really big revelations for him. So in this musical, having that one revelation for you is really, really cool. And after seeing the show and reading this from him, made me feel like, okay, well, he did it right.
Right.
Because I had the moment that he wanted me to have.
Right.
And it was pretty cool.
God, he's such a wonderful person.
He really is. Another fun fact is Michelle Obama called it the best piece of art in any form that she had ever seen in her life.
That is, I was going to say high praise. That may be the highest possible praise that you can give anything.
So there's that. And if you don't know, now you know. It's a line from the musical.
Oh.
And also Tupac.
Oh. I was like, yep. I do.
Fun fact, Miranda got a lot of hip-hop inspiration from a lot of rappers. Jay-Z, Tupac, a couple others that aren't coming to top of mind right now.
That's fine.
Yeah. So
I did read something. So I know nothing about this musical and basically nothing about anything, but I did read that one line. I'm guessing it was in the 10 Dual Commandments, because that's the only one that I actually read anything that had to do with the show. Everything else that I was looking up was actual history. That one of the lines was mirroring a line by Biggie. Now that I've said that whole thing, it was not very interesting.
No, so do you know the line?
No, I have no idea. I could look it up, though.
Okay, maybe we'll put it in post. Or the show notes. It'll be somewhere after.
I had every intention of making some really interesting show notes, but as I was researching this, there was just so much information. So now my show notes are really just who the founding fathers were. There are 7 names, and that's it.
Well, and as going through and doing the research for my part is like a history paper.
Yeah, it is outlined like a history paper.
Yes, I sat there and I had my different kind of categories. And then once I was done, I started rearranging it to make it flow better, like I would have done on
an essay
paper
or something, yeah.
in college. Yep. Well,
and we'll be posting an annotated bibliography, April's annotated bibliography.
Let's see. What are some more cool things about Hamilton?
The show or the person?
Specifically the show. So it has a record-setting 16 Tony nominations in 2016. It's pretty big. It won 11 of those.
Do we know what record it broke?
I guess the number of nominations?
Yeah. The correct answer to this is the producers and Billy Elliot, both of which had 15 nominations. Both of which I've seen and love. So
Oh, there you go. Now, next up, Hamilton. An American musical. So another really cool thing about Hamilton, if you don't already know, is that they were very color conscious when casting the different roles. I will say something really funny. There are white characters in the musical, but they're all the douchebags. So, like, King George was, from what I can tell, is played by a white man.
Yeah.
A couple of the other, like, douchey characters that are obviously on the other side,
Right.
are played by white men. And you're supposed to really hate them.
Cool.
So, that's all I got. Do you got anything?
About race and the founding fathers?
Sure.
No. I mean, it wasn't good back then.
Well, so we just read a really interesting article in the Leo.
Correct.
So in a lot of the songs in the musical, they talk about how Alexander Hamilton is an immigrant and how another immigrant coming up from the bottom. Immigrants, we get the job done. So those are a couple of the lines from the musical. And I found it very interesting that he was actually pretty anti-immigrant.
Yes, that is interesting. Well, I will say, I mean, race aside, because obviously that was a whole thing. All of the people that I researched, I thought were terrible, like just awful, toe to tip. And I think probably that's not the way that it is. If you're watching the musical, you have characters that you're sympathetic with. But if you're just reading the Wikipedia articles, they're pretty not great.
Any name drops you want to?
Well, Hamilton.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like a great guy, to be honest.
No, very self-centered.
Yeah.
A bit of a hoe.
A bit of a hoe. I don't agree with him politically on a lot of things. I mean, yeah, he was elitist, like you said. I mean, he was classist. Which is kind of gross. Interesting because he came from humble beginnings, but still gross.
All right, so should we just kind of go scene by scene of the musical? Kind of talk about some fun things that happened, some interesting things.
How was your experience at the Kentucky Center?
The center is always great. They had a fire last year, so there's still a lot of work to be done, and it was crowded, and the bar didn't open until 30 minutes before the show.
Did I tell you about when John went to pick up our Nutcracker tickets and asked them what construction they were doing?
No.
Yeah, their building caught on fire.
That's not funny.
It's terrible.
There was a whole thing about that, and he didn't read it anywhere?
He just forgot it, and he saw the scaffolding and was trying to be like...
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
What you guys working on? Just repairing the extreme damage.
We sat next to these two girls who I think were under the age of 21 just based on the fact that they weren't drinking.
Okay.
They just had 2 cans of Coke. And they seemed really immature. So I am someone who has listened to the soundtrack a couple of times. I've listened to the first act the most. Just because the songs are a little bit more upbeat and fast. These girls have listened to the soundtrack more times than I have, and it showed. They sung every single song.
Out loud?
Yes. They made up their own dance moves.
What?
Yes, to the song.
I would rather they didn't.
I would have too. It took away from some of it. I don't understand how people... feel like they are the only ones in the room.
I don't know.
I get experiencing something, but at the same time, there's other people trying to experience it too. And I just so happened to know the songs as well, so I was able to still listen and take it in and not be too distracted, but I couldn't have imagined not knowing what the musical Hamilton was about or the songs or anything like that, and having to sit next to these girls. At one point, there's a scene that's kind of sad, and it's sad to watch, it's sad to listen to, and I understand people get really emotional, but come on. Full on, ugly cry.
Oh my god.
Whimpering. You're just trying to show off at this point that you feel emotions.
I'm not an actual psychopath.
Well, it was almost like a competition, who could cry harder.
Between the two of them?
Between the two. Who could sing louder? Who could have the most expressive arm movements when the different stuff happened? And then at the end, so you mentioned the 10 Dual Commandments. Mm-hmm. One of the lines in it is something like, you get a doctor to turn around so that he can have deniability. This is said at least twice in the musical, if not more. And these bitches have heard this musical all the way through multiple times. And for it to be the last duel of the show, and they say, turns around to have deniability, and this bitch turns to her friend and says, "What does deniability mean?"
No.
Yes.
Why? Wouldn't you know that?
It's a word. It's deny is
that's a very common word.
First grade vocab word, probably.
I hate that.
Yeah.
I don't handle that kind of stuff well. I feel like, you guys go to see a lot more movies than we do. Or I do. We don't have to do everything together, my husband and me. But I feel like a big part of the reason I don't go to see movies very much is because other people in the theater ruin it for me. Mm-hmm. Like the very last movie that I saw where someone with sleep apnea was 2 inches behind my head for an hour and a half. No.
No.
Go home and take a nap. Like, I feel like I have to stay home and watch a movie in my own home just so that I cannot be bothered by people when they could stay home and watch a movie and text or nap at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Rude. All right, well, back to Hamilton. The opening number is pretty important. Basically outlines Hamilton's way to America.
Okay.
If you didn't know, he was an immigrant from...
I did read that.
The Caribbeans.
Gotcha. Caribbeans.
Caribbean.
Okay.
Area.
Yes.
West
Indies?
I was going to say West Indies, but now I'm not 100% sure.
It was in the Leeward Islands, then part of the British West Indies.
There you go.
Nailed it.
Then he meets Washington after... Well, he meets the Schuyler sisters first, but we'll get into that.
Okay.
He meets Washington.
Okay.
He is Washington's right-hand man.
Okay.
Did you know that?
I knew that they work together. They're all sort of involved.
With each other.
Yeah. I'm not a historian.
Okay.
I have not researched this stuff since probably 8th grade. It's been a while. If you can't tell by my very youthful voice, it's been a long time since I was in 8th grade.
So that was something I didn't know, that basically Hamilton was right there next to Washington, wrote a lot of his speeches. So that was kind of cool to find out, and has one of the better musical numbers in the musical.
What's it called?
Right Hand Man, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
You'll hear about it when I give you my top 5 songs to listen to. That's one of them. And then the Schuyler sisters, some pretty badass bitches.
Okay.
There's Angelica, Eliza, and Peggy.
Yes, I read about all of them. They all seem to have done very interesting things.
Oh, yeah.
Peggy may be the most interesting, I think.
Really?
Well, she got an axe thrown at her head.
Fuck. I did not know that.
Yeah.
It's not in the musical.
Oh, man. Yeah, there was... Yeah, do you want to hear about that?
I do.
So there was this one... apparently she, like, saved the country. I don't even know... I don't remember what happened. So I'm giving you the abridged version from an idiot. But... Everybody was, like, at this house, and then I'm assuming the British come and they're, like, looking for their father. Yes, April dropped this into the middle of my story. It wasn't the British, it was the Tories, which are basically the same thing. End quote. And they all go upstairs to hide, and then they remember that their niece is downstairs. So Peggy leaves their hiding place, goes downstairs, gets their niece, and then... These people have, like, their muskets in her face, and they're like, "Where's your father?" And she's like, "Oh, he went to the next town to find troops to come get you." And they get freaked out, and they run away. She gets the baby. She starts running upstairs, and someone threw an axe at her head, like, right where her head was. She just narrowly missed getting an axe in the head.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That is a fun story.
Yeah, it's a fun story.
Yeah. Philip Schuyler's her dad.
Yes.
Yep. He was, he held some sort of seat in New York. I can't remember if it was a Senate seat. I think it was a Senate seat. Which Burr ended up stealing from him at one point.
I'm assuming Burr is the villain.
Oh, yeah.
Is he played by a white man?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
He's not. It's really only the British that are played by white men.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. No, so in the musical, you either like Hamilton or you like Burr, is kind of where I see people, just because they're always up against each other. And, I mean, if you have your own political beliefs, you're going to go to either side.
Yeah, sure.
Well, so I have some cool facts about the Schuyler sisters.
Hit me.
Well, so he married Eliza. And although in the show it's depicted that Hamilton also kind of had a thing for Angelica, that may or may not actually be true. So when in the show it's kind of talked like Angelica really wanted to marry Hamilton but couldn't marry him because she had to marry rich, and Hamilton, being an immigrant who came over and is fighting a war, didn't really have any money. So she couldn't really marry Hamilton because she needed to marry someone with money. But in real life, she had actually been married for like 3 years before she even met Hamilton.
Yeah. Well, but they did exchange spicy letters.
They did.
And I read that, and I have some I'm just confused, I guess. I'm confused because, I mean, we're pretty close. I'm also pretty close with your husband. If I were like, I just want you to know, I just really love your husband, and I would love to borrow him. How would you feel about that?
Not good.
Not great.
Is that something she said?
Yeah. That's something she wrote to Eliza. She was like, if you had the generosity of the old Romans or something like that, you would lend him to me.
Spicy. I don't like that.
I don't either. Calm yourself down, Angelica.
Well, I have in my notes that there were a couple of letters that Hamilton and Angelica exchanged, where the comma was put in between dearest and Angelica, which apparently, I'm not an English major, changes the whole sentence.
What was the sentence?
My dearest, comma, Angelica. I guess the added comma makes it something spicy.
Oh, like he's referring to her as my dearest? That makes sense. I mean, presumably Eliza would be his dearest if we're ranking them.
Yeah.
From dearest to least dear.
Well, so that's about it for the Schuyler sisters, unless you have anything else interesting about them. We can talk a little bit more about Eliza. There's a song at the end that kind of talks about what she does and how pretty awesome she is. So we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
So there's a really cool song called Non-Stop. It's the last song in Act 1. So it's, we're starting to get where we won the war. Things are starting to get how do we run a country type deal. So there is a song called Non-Stop that discusses the Federalist Papers.
I did research those. It's my interjection.
So those are a collection of 85 articles and essays written by Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay. And it was to promote the ratification of the U.S. Constitution. They were supposed to, I forget what the number was that they were going to write, and they were going to split them all evenly. And if I remember correctly, the number wasn't actually able to be split evenly between the three, but whatever. Hamilton ended up writing 51 of those articles and essays. So if you don't know by now, he liked to write.
I did read, I know we're going to talk about Eliza some more, but I did read that while she was raising their children and taking care of their household and all this other stuff, she would stay up late while he just read his papers to her. And she was his sounding board. Just fucking exhausting. Let this woman sleep.
Right. Well, I have a really fun fact about the Federalist Papers.
Hit me. How fun is it really?
It's pretty fun.
Okay.
So the Supreme Court.
I've heard of it, yeah.
The Federalist Papers have been quoted 291 times in Supreme Court decisions. It is one of the most quoted documents that the Supreme Court quotes, which is really cool.
That is, yeah, that's a fun fact.
Well, then the second act, Thomas Jefferson pops up.
So the whole first act is what? Introducing Hamilton as a character. Introducing his relationship with George Washington.
Mm-hmm. You get a lot of introductions of characters. The Schuyler sisters come in. You get this whole, after the first song, Alexander Hamilton, you have the Aaron Burr song that introduces them and their Lawrence, Lafayette, Mulligans. I'm probably messing all of that up. They all are introduced, so they're pretty big players in the musical, and there's just a couple of other songs that really work out the how they win the war. So the role that Alexander Hamilton played, the role that the French played in winning the Revolutionary War, and also how pissed off King George was that they were fighting him, basically.
A lot, I'm guessing.
Yeah, he was not happy.
Okay. Cool. End of Act 1.
End of Act 1. In Act 2, you see a lot more. So the country's brand new.
Mm-hmm.
You get a lot of... there's a lot of fights that go on, so or a lot of aggression towards others. So there's a lot of discourse between Eliza and Hamilton eventually in the act. Thomas Jefferson does not like Hamilton, like, at all.
I read that.
Yeah, they were not good friends. Burr still, so one of the things that the musical I don't think got 100% right is that Burr and Hamilton they kind of coexisted. So they weren't always down each other's throat, but they didn't, like, love each other either. They coexisted in the political climate that was going on, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then...
is it down each other's throat the term?
Yeah, that's the term I want to use.
Okay. I don't think I've heard that before, but I believe you.
Yeah, that's definitely something you say.
Okay.
It's like I'm down someone's throat?
I guess so. I'm not gonna lie, it does sound sexual.
Definition. Down someone's throat. To force someone to accept or like something such as one ideas or believe. She was always forcing her opinions down his throat.
And I understand the idea of forcing your opinions down someone else's throat. It's the idea of forcing yourself down someone else's throat.
All right, so I may have misspoke. They weren't at each other's throat.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Okay. So, second act, Thomas Jefferson comes home from being the ambassador of France. Like I mentioned, he was not a big fan of Hamilton or his financial solutions for the new country. That was mostly because the South had a lot of money because they had free labor.
Not great.
Not great. And the North did not have as much. They did have, slaves and stuff up north, but a lot of the stuff that you can't grow a lot
right
in the North.
Right.
So they were getting a lot of their money from crops and different things like that. And so they didn't really want to take on the debt of the rest of the country because they didn't really have debt. So they felt like they were getting robbed from something. One of the really cool songs, one of my favorite parts of the musical, are the cabinet battles. So they're kind of like rap battles towards each other. And they're just a lot of fun. And it just has a lot of energy. And one of my favorite lines I'm going to read to you. Jefferson says, "Look, when Britain taxed our tea, we got frisky. Imagine what's going to happen when they try to tax our whiskey." I don't know. I just love that line so much.
That's a good line.
Maybe because we're from Kentucky, but it just was a really fun line.
That is cute.
And then there's some other stuff about how they have crops and stuff, and then Hamilton comes in and it's like, okay, but who's really planting those crops? Who's really doing that free labor for you? So it tells a really interesting point of history that you don't always, get shoved down your throat.
Right.
Especially like in school. So I feel like the darker side of history and stuff like that, you have to really do your own research.
Oh, for sure.
And I really think, while still not as explicit as it should be, I think Hamilton does shine light on some of those darker times in America's history. And they do it through a fun rap battle.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good way of getting people interested or teaching people.
People are going to the shows, so.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The Reynolds Papers.
I did research this as well.
So this is interesting. Hamilton in the show and in real life, maybe, had an affair with Maria Reynolds. His wife travels up north, upstate New York, for the summer, and he's left alone to his own devices.
Never leave your husband alone to his own devices. That's what we've learned from this.
Especially if you leave him around Maddie.
Just want to borrow him.
So, and then upon discovery of the affair, James Reynolds, Maria's husband, basically blackmails Hamilton to keep the affair secret. And Hamilton keeps going back?
Yeah.
Okay. Until he decides he doesn't want any more. This is anyways in the show. And then eventually some people find out about the affair in the musical. During a song called We Know, Jefferson, Burr, and Madison confront Hamilton about his affair. However, in real life, those are not the people who confronted him about the affair, which I kind of thought was interesting. But you can't have too many players on a show or it just gets confusing. But in real life, it was James Monroe, Abraham Venable, and Frederick Muhlenberg. Apparently, James Monroe and Jefferson were pretty tight, and Jefferson found out about it, and he was the one who did leak it out. So Jefferson did play a role in it in real life.
It's kind of douchey.
Kind of douchey, but
so is having an affair with, another person. So is having an affair. I guess the other person is implied.
Yeah, maybe. I guess so. Yeah, not cool, Hamilton. I mean, sister's one thing, but like actually going out and doing it,
yeah,
not cool. So he then, because he is fearful that this is going to get out, decides to get ahead of the story and basically says, hey, look at what I've done. And this is done through the Reynolds pamphlet. In the show, it temporarily damaged his relationship with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently in real life, Eliza and Alexander did not separate. Instead, they grew closer, according to letters.
Yeah, so one of the things that I read, first of all, can you imagine if Bill Clinton had done that? He was like, before anyone says anything, I've written this that I would like everyone to read. Please enjoy.
I did actually have sex with that woman.
And these are all of the different ways we did it and where. It's 200 pages long. No, one of the things that I read that said that the letters between Eliza and Hamilton after the affair were so not like the letters you would imagine to people who had a really like severe schism in their relationship to write each other. That maybe the whole affair was like a cover-up for some sort of financial catastrophe or something like that.
Yeah, I read that too. Something about the letters, because what ended up happening is there was letters that Maria and what was her husband's name? James, yeah. Between James and Maria, sending them to Hamilton to quote-unquote blackmail them. But these letters that they would write, something to the fact of some larger, more complicated words were spelled correctly, yet some of the shorter, less complicated words were misspelled.
Right, so that it was like what a well-educated man assumed a woman's love letters
would sound like,
yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
I agree. And they also said something about, because Eliza burned all of her letters, right, from Hamilton?
Yeah, in the musical, there is a scene called Burn where she physically burns the letters. She erases herself from his history, is what the song implies. But we don't know where those letters actually are, what happened to them, is what I read.
Right.
She may not have actually burned them.
Well, I read something that was like, so in the same line on this Wikipedia article that talks about the weird misspellings, a Hamilton biographer also stated that the letters looked like letters between Alexander and Eliza, which could explain why Eliza burned her letters.
There you go.
I feel like I said that like, now we've gotten to the bottom of it.
Now we found out.
Now we figured out all of history.
So Eliza and Hamilton, they did have a couple of kids. Their oldest child was named Philip.
Mm-hmm.
Did you read anything about Philip?
I did. I read that he was named after her father and died himself in a duel when he was 19. And then later on, I don't want to spoil it, but later on, Hamilton does have a duel himself, and it's in like the same location, which I think is a bummer.
Yeah, for sure. So that was what I was going to say, is that his son Philip did die in a duel. He was in the duel with someone named George Ecker, and he decided to duel this guy because he was talking shit about his dad after the Reynolds papers.
Oh, really?
Came out, according to the musical. I didn't see much difference in the research that I did, so we'll just go with that.
Toxic masculinity.
In the musical, the death of Philip causes a reconciliation between Eliza and Hamilton, and that was, by the way, one of the parts that these girls
started sobbing when Philip died?
When Philip died. And I guess it was him dying and then Eliza's reaction to it, because there is a really emotional song about that happening. But, like, come on.
Pull yourselves together, ladies.
200 plus years ago, guys.
Yeah, and you didn't even know him, I bet.
So after all that, Hamilton goes kind of away for a little bit, kind of decompresses with his wife. And then Jefferson and Burr decide to run against each other for president, being the third president. So we didn't really talk about president number 2, John Adams, but there wasn't much that happened, except for a little bit of Hamilton sucks, let's not have him on our payroll. Jefferson and Burr run against each other for the seat of commander-in-chief. And Burr thinks that Hamilton might endorse him, but that doesn't happen.
That makes me kind of sad.
Yeah, he endorses Jefferson instead, and this kind of shocks Jefferson and Burr. In the musical, this is what causes the Burr-Hamilton duel, but apparently that's not what actually caused the Burr-Hamilton duel in real life. But just to kind of go with the musical for a second, it was the same place where Philip was killed. Burr does shoot and kill Hamilton because Hamilton technically throws away his shot.
Right.
Which is really fun to kind of hear that part, because you're listening to the first couple songs in act number 1 where he literally says, I'm not throwing away my shot. That meaning that he's not going to throw away his shot to be somebody.
Right.
And it wasn't until I got to this song that I understood that there was a second meaning to that.
Right.
And I really liked that
connecting
part.
It back. Yeah.
So in real life, he did throw away his shot. He actually shot a tree branch that missed Burr, so it didn't actually hit him. And Burr did fatally shoot Hamilton. In real life, the duel happened, though, because Hamilton continuously defamed Burr's name.
Whoopsies.
Yeah. Not fun.
Toxic masculinity.
There you go.
Now you know.
In the end, there's a really cool song in the end where Eliza kind of talks about all the things that are starting to happen after Hamilton dies, from her perspective. I kind of think this would have been a really cool musical just based on Eliza.
Yeah.
She's a pretty cool chick.
Yeah.
She has a lot of stuff going on. And I think you could have told a really cool story from her point of view. It still included the historical stuff, and I mean, having a scene where an axe is thrown at her sister's head would have been interesting.
I agree.
But so let's talk about some of the stuff that she did after Hamilton died.
Well, the orphanage is the big one that I remember. My recall, as I said, is not great. But yeah, she started an orphanage that I think is still in
New York.
Yeah.
It's called the Graham Wyndham Orphanage. It was the first public or privately owned orphanage in New York City.
And she adopted some kids too, didn't she?
So that opened up in 1806. That was 2 years after her husband died. She also helped fundraise for the Washington Monument.
That's cool.
Yeah, I kind of thought that was cool as a fundraiser.
Yeah, I read her whole Wikipedia article, and then I read like 18 more. So she was one of the first ones that I researched because you said I would think she was cool. But yeah, it seems like Hamilton being in his position politically, like being the spouse of someone who's in that position is like a whole job in and of itself. And she pretty much kicked ass at that, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so that's how the musical ends. Is Eliza saying, well, Hamilton did some cool shit, but I also did some cool shit.
Yeah.
And I really thought that was cool. Do you want to hear some cool Hamilton facts?
I do.
So some cool facts about Hamilton, the person. The oldest unit in the U.S. Army was Hamilton's.
Oh, wait.
So
what?
that's still around today.
Oh, okay. Probably
should have added that. So according to the Army Historical Foundation, Battery D, 1st Battalion, 5th Field Artillery, 1st Infantry Division traces its lineage to Hamilton's Revolutionary War Artillery Company.
It rolls right off the tongue.
It does. Is the oldest serving unit in the regular army.
When you said the oldest unit, I did imagine very old soldiers.
I'm not sure what the makeup of the unit is.
100% geriatric.
Could be.
Yeah. Their walkers are also muskets.
They have like little pistols on
the end of each.
Their canes are. Yeah, I hear you.
Swords and stuff.
Another cool thing is that he founded the New York Post.
I read that. That is cool. I had no idea.
So it was originally called the New York Evening Post, and he founded that in November 1801. He used it to basically talk shit about Jefferson.
Well, since the Facebook of its day.
Right. So yeah, he wrote a lot of the editorials in there. So Hamilton did like to duel. He was in no fewer than 10 duels. But only one ended with a shot, and it was fatal.
I read that this seemed apocryphal. I read that every single duel that he was in. Wait a second, I'm understanding something now. It said failed to fire, but
yeah,
that means that they chose not to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because when I first read the guns failed to fire, I assumed them. I assumed that did mean that every single gun was defective. And 20 defective guns in a row seems like you would think that your odds for not getting shot the 11th time were pretty good.
Yeah, probably.
Sentence structure.
Yeah, so in the 10 dual commandments, one of the commandment numbers are you send your second in to negotiate a peace. So most of the duels were negotiated away.
Cool.
Yeah. Another cool duel fact.
Can we start a second podcast called Cool Duel Facts?
Yeah, sure. So the duel that Hamilton lost his life in could have not even happened. The duel that could have ended all duels. So 5 years before Hamilton's fatal duel, his brother-in-law, John Church, so Angelica's husband, faced off against the exact same opponent, Aaron Burr, sir. On the exact same grounds, possibly using the exact same guns. So John Church, he was a British supporter of the American Revolution, while the husband of Angelica, he called out Aaron Burr for taking bribes, along with stealing his father-in-law's Senate seat in 1799.
Both shitty things to do.
Yeah, not cool, Burr. As challenger, Church picked the dueling grounds of Weehawken, New Jersey, because everything's legal in New Jersey. Maddie doesn't get any of these references because she's not seen the musical.
I was like, dang. I had no idea.
You'll understand one day once you listen to the soundtrack.
Okay. My interest is piqued after recording a 2-hour podcast about it.
Good. He picked the Weehawken, New Jersey, and the weapons, which were a set of fine British pistols that were specifically made to duel.
What does that mean? Do you have any idea what that means?
So what I would assume it means, and this is just kind of using reasoning, is that you walk 10 paces before you shoot, so it was probably a gun that was only, like, able to shoot that far. Like, it didn't need to shoot across a field.
Yeah.
So it was more of a close range.
Close range sort of.
Yeah. We can look it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, if you accidentally walk 11 paces, the bullet's just, like...
it's gonna fall right in front of him, yeah. That's why you have to count it out.
Yeah.
No big steps here.
Because right in your buttonhole.
Neither of the men were injured that day. However, Church put a round through Burr's coat, coming within inches of changing history. 5 years later, Hamilton would be on the Weehawken battleground with allegedly the same gun in hand. Burr, by the way, at the time was vice president, so...
At the time of the duel?
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine that happening today?
Pence. There are a couple of other cool musicals.
Oh, about the Founding Fathers? Or historical figure?
Yeah.
Cool.
So one of them is called Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson.
Sounds appropriate.
Yeah. The show is a comedic historical rock musical.
Okay.
Yeah. The poster for the show is pretty funny. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's some Clash-looking shit. That is a butt.
That is a butt.
History just got all sexy pants.
So that is one of the musicals. It is about the founding of the Democratic Party. So it could be a pretty interesting musical to listen to. It is not spoken, or it is not sung all the way through. There is some spoken word in that. But it redefines Andrew Jackson, our 7th president, as an emo rock star and focuses on populism, the Indian Removal Act, and his relationship with his wife, Rachel.
Interesting.
Yeah. There you go.
I would find it hard to sympathize with Andrew Jackson.
Another musical is called 1776. Have you ever seen it?
I haven't.
There's a movie. The musical is first, and then there's a movie starring Mr. Feeney.
Mr. Feeney?
Yeah. Yes. I think I saw this movie when I was in high school.
It sounds familiar, but I don't think that I've seen it.
So those are two musicals that have been done about some historical peeps.
Yeah, two other historical musicals that are not nearly as well regarded as Hamilton.
Yeah, the 1776 is specifically about the signing of the Declaration of Independence and features John Adams mostly. Mm-hmm. So as we learn, the second president.
Maybe, yes. Maybe the reason that 1776 sounds familiar is not because of the musical, but because the actual date is very relevant to the history of our country. It's like someone saying, oh yeah, Independence Day. I haven't seen it, but it sounds familiar. It's like, well, yeah, also it's a holiday that happens every year.
Are there any other founding fathers or historical people during the Revolutionary time that would make good musicals?
Well, I don't know because I don't really know anything, but I imagine that Benjamin Franklin would be pretty interesting just because he had he had a lot of stuff going on. And I think it's interesting when people have a lot of different interests like that. Mm-hmm. They make for pretty interesting stories. I don't have a thing for Benjamin Franklin. I just happen to know that he's kind of a freak.
Well, we'll get there in a minute, Maddie.
Okay. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I think Thomas Jefferson would be a really cool one. I've always liked Thomas Jefferson.
I do too. Yeah, I think Thomas Jefferson was an interesting person. Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be a cool one.
That would be probably a way more chilled out musical than Hamilton would be.
Should we do a quiz?
Yeah, let's do a quiz. It's a quiz about Hamilton, an American musical. not a pop quiz if you were paying attention during this show.
So this is a quiz on what Hamilton musical character are you?
Okay.
I'll ask you the questions, or do you want to ask me?
No, you ask me the questions because I have no bias.
So these have nothing to do with the actual musical.
Oh, okay.
It's literally, what is your favorite color? Or, I'm sorry, what color represents your personality the best?
Oh.
Here are the...
Red, light green, anything sparkly.
That's
gray.
not a color.
No, it's not. Gray is not actually a color either. Gold, orange, dark blue, or dark purple. I'm going to say dark purple because it is both my favorite color, and I just think that my thoughts are probably dark purple. I don't know.
How would people who know you describe you?
Stubborn and selfish, simple and direct, amiable yet tough, feisty and opinionated.
That was what I chose yesterday.
So that sounds perfectly accurate. Smart and unbreakable, strong and brave, confident and determined, skilled yet envious. I'm not feisty and opinionated, I don't think.
You're pretty smart and unbreakable.
All right, smart and unbreakable.
Okay.
Not physically, though, don't hit me.
What is the closest to your dream job?
Politician, no. Parent, no. Soldier, dear God, no. Writer, yeah.
It's a picture of a cat. How forgiving are you?
I would say pretty forgiving.
Pretty forgiving.
Pretty forgiving if people say that they're sorry.
Are you a leader or a follower?
I don't know. I'm probably making this quiz too hard. But I was telling John yesterday that I feel like my whole life is like trying to decide whether I want to, like, if I want everyone to ignore me or I want to be the center of attention. You know what I mean? So, like, I would go back and forth. I would say leader, but I'll follow if I have to.
What do you do when you meet a new person? This was a weird question, I think.
Well, hold on a second. Introduce yourself kindly. That's normal. Give them advice. But that isn't very normal, is it?
Not when you, like, meet them. Like, the first time you're meeting them.
No. Like...
hey, Maddie, you should get your hair cut.
You should invest in cryptocurrency. Hello, my name is Maddie.
Size them up.
Size them up.
I feel like that's a pretty typical response to people.
Like
you're like, okay, I can be friends with her.
Yeah.
Or, oh, she looks like a bitch. Or that's what I do.
That is what you do.
That was my answer.
I think
make a rude remark.
Sup, idiot.
Impress them. Talk. Show them who's boss, which I'm not 100% sure what that means.
First of all, I do a capoeira style flip where I jump onto their shoulders, get their throat into a lock, and then when they fall asleep, I sit on their chest, wait for them to wake up, and then introduce myself.
That's not an option.
But that's showing them who's boss.
Is that...
No.
Okay.
I would say introduce myself kindly, like a normal fucking human being.
What animal do you relate to the most?
Is there a bunny? But there's a picture of a bunny, but no bunny.
No, there's no bunnies. A loyal puppy, a sassy kitten, a smart dolphin, a cocky peacock, a flashy parrot, a fearless wolf, a lonely crow, a fierce lion.
First of all, I thought that said a lonely cow. I was about to say that one. I guess a sassy kitten. These are all so strange.
I know.
And it's annoying that they put a picture of a rabbit and then wouldn't
put a rabbit up there. Yeah. If you were challenged to a duel, what would you do? Accept it? Shoot them and kill them? You would be the one who would challenge and you would shoot the other person and kill them. Accept it, but don't show up? Okay. Have a reasoned debate with them instead? Follow my instinct? Tell them I don't have time for that mess? Accept the duel, but point my gun to the sky, sparing my opponent's life? Accept the challenge, but wait to see what the other person will do before shooting? Politely refuse.
I think I would say I don't have time for that mess.
Which one's that?
The one that says I don't have time for that mess. Tell them I don't have time for that.
Okay. So this will mean nothing to you. Pick a Hamilton song. Satisfied, What Did I Miss, Helpless, The Room Where It Happens, Right Hand Man, Guns and Ships, You'll Be Back, My Shot.
I'm gonna say The Room Where It Happens only because I know one line from that, which is also the title of the song.
Yep. Pick a Hamilton lyric. Daddy's Calling, Boy You Got Me Helpless, Awesome Wow, Talk Less, Smile More, Immigrants, We Get the Job Done, Just Like My Country, I'm Young, Scrappy, and Hungry, Hey Yo, I'm Gonna Need a Right-Hand Man, You Want a Revolution, I Want a Revelation, which is my favorite line in the musical.
I'm gonna say Talk Less, Smile More.
Okay. Ooh, you got Angelica Schuyler. Hey. That's what I got yesterday.
That's exciting.
You are sassy and independent, a natural leader. You love to talk about your opinions, and you are clever and witty. Everyone who meets you knows that you're the boss.
I feel like that's true for you, but not necessarily true for me. I don't know what I did to...
Why not?
Do you think I would say I'm independent. I don't know if I'm sassy.
Oh, you're sassy.
I guess when I see something about you love to talk about your opinions, I automatically go to political, which is not true. Mm-hmm. I hate talking politics, but I will talk about my other opinions all day long.
Oh, yeah.
Two Angelicas.
Well, so, on that note, Hamilton, an American musical. Phenomenon.
It's confusing because non and not are both negative. When you take them away from the root word.
All right.
But I get what you're saying.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I really enjoyed it. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I did. All I've been doing is thinking about it and the different things that happened on stage. It was just a really, really cool musical experience.
Do you think that the fact that you're a history buff and a political science major made you appreciate it more?
I think it did make me appreciate it more. I don't think that you have to be those things to appreciate the musical, though.
Okay.
Just the music itself was really cool, and the hip-hop dancing, but I like all of those things, too.
Right.
So, ask a total lame-o that question.
Okay, I will.
And we'll see. Should you listen to the soundtrack before seeing the musical? I say yes.
Okay.
Should you silently sing along while watching the musical? Yes, silently, not out loud, and without hand movements.
Okay, silent and still.
Don't enjoy yourselves.
No.
At all.
Be like light as a feather, stiff as a board.
I will say there was people in the audience who had obviously not listened to the soundtrack prior to going in, and so they didn't know how the story unfolded at all. They must not have known much about American history either. Their authentic reactions to some of the parts in the musical were so great.
Yeah.
And I love that. So if you're going to have reactions, please be authentic. Don't be douchey like these girls next to me.
Okay. And that goes for any show. Just don't be a douche.
It really does. And then I wanted to give my top 5 favorite songs to listen to.
Okay. In
case you didn't have 2 hours and 44 minutes to listen to the whole soundtrack.
Okay. I thought you were going to say 2 hours and 44 minutes to listen to our whole podcast.
I hope it's not going to be that long.
A little over.
So the first song is the first song on the album, Alexander Hamilton. It gives a nice little exposition of what you're about to listen to. Right Hand Man, that's about George Washington and Alexander Hamilton getting together and like kicking ass.
Cool.
10 Duel Commandments is just a really cool song because it walks you through a duel. It's a really fun song. The Cabinet Battle #1, that was the one between Jefferson and Hamilton, where they talked about getting frisky and taxing whiskey. That one's always fun. And then I had a hard time just narrowing down to 5. But I picked the last song of the musical, Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Tells Your Story, just because it does a nice little wrap-up of what happened. There's obviously a lot more songs that are fun, so I do recommend listening to it all, but if you can't, then you can't.
Well, I, for one, am going to listen to it all now that I've gotten a full review and a good refresher on American history. Well, that does it for today on There Are Lots of Things. Thank you for listening. It was so much fun to hang out with you, April, and discuss Hamilton, an American musical, and Hamilton, the person who existed in our history. We hope that you had fun with us this week.
Make sure you visit us on Facebook and Instagram, where you'll find today's show notes along with a fun trivia question that will give you a hint about next week's episode topic. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the podcast over at iTunes or wherever you stream your podcast. Until next time, cheers!